In 1967, the Western world was introduced to stealthy figures from the Far East, dressed in all black, wielding katanas, blow darts, shuriken, and other exotic weapons of death in James Bond's 1967 thriller, You Only Live Twice. While the movie's portrayal of the ninja was criminally inaccurate, it nonetheless set off a worldwide thirst for more knowledge about these mysterious warriors. Nearly 6 decades later, our fascination with ninjas has only grown. Unfortunately, so much of what we think we know about the ninja, or more accurately the shinobi, continues to be shrouded in folktale embellishments, Hollywood scripting, and a dearth of written history. All of this has led to some fantastical portrayals of shinobi and their powers, or should we say, superpowers. But what if I were to tell you that the elusive truth about the shinobi is far more fascinating than any contrived notion of what they were? Well, it is. And in today's Samurai Odyssey episode, The Rise of the Shinobi, you will learn how they evolved from simple beginnings as farmers and tradespeople of a remote, mountainous region in central Japan into feared operatives that became coveted clandestine mercenaries for the highest levels of feudal Japan society, including Japan's greatest shogun of all, Tokugawa Ieyasu. The key to understanding the shinobi is understanding the impact the unforgiving geography of where they lived had on their development as individuals and as a society. The small mountain villages from where they hailed in the Iga province were surrounded by natural barriers in the form of steep mountain ranges and numerous bodies of water. This rugged topography had an insular effect on the people of Iga and Koga that enabled them to develop into a one-of-a-kind martial subculture, one that was starkly different than the daimyo and his loyal samurai feudal arrangement that prevailed at the time. The shinobi would not so coincidentally reach their peak of significance during the apex of samurai conflicts known as the Warring States period or Sengoku Jidai. The first records of the shinobi start during the 12th century in the province of Iga and the nearby Koga district of the Omi province. Their isolation and the ruggedness of their surrounding terrain profoundly impacted the inhabitants in 2 ways. First, it forced them to lead relatively Spartan lives focused on individual survival. As such, they became resourceful and highly skilled at all things necessary to live off the land. Nothing like the privileged life of a samurai. Second, the natural barriers led the people of Iga and Koga to develop societally, politically, and even spiritually independent of the rest of Japan. Especially in the Iga province, the inhabitants led autonomous lives, refusing to be beholden to any of the power-hungry daimyo. While their surroundings kept them relatively isolated, over time the shinobi were subject to hostile incursions from the samurai of the increasingly ambitious daimyo. Against such forces, given their limited numbers and resources, they were unable to fight the large, fixed battles typically waged by the forces of the wealthy daimyo. Relying on resourcefulness and independent thinking, they deployed what we would refer to today as guerrilla tactics for their defense. Building upon their basic survival skills, these tactics included stealth, deception, covert operations, arson, special weapons, and explosives, to name a few. Given their independent existence, these simple farmers and tradesmen of the Iga and Koga were free to hone their skills in areas that traditional samurai might consider beneath their Bushido code of honor. In time, many of the shinobi became highly skilled in specific aspects of guerrilla warfare. In some cases, families would become known for their expertise in specific areas. Eventually, they would incorporate the skills they developed into a martial art that became known as ninjutsu. Among the skills included in ninjutsu were the gathering of information, mastering non-detection, avoidance of threat, misdirection and rouse, the art of disguise, the planning and execution of escape, concealment, archery and basic medicine. The value of these skills did not go unnoticed by the daimyo of the time. While they found it personally advantageous to cite the Bushido notions of honor, the leaders of feudal Japan were all deeply influenced by the writings of Sun Tzu, specifically the value of deception and some of the more un-Bushido-like tactics that the shinobi had mastered. Ironically, many of the greatest battles of feudal Japan were significantly influenced by tide-turning acts of deception, including Japan's greatest samurai battle of all, Sekigahara. Given that the many clandestine skills of the shinobi were highly useful to the ambitious daimyo, it soon became commonplace for the daimyo to employ the shinobi from these provinces in a mercenary fashion to perform various unseemly covert tasks for them. By the mid-15th century, the fighting between the daimyo began to escalate, and the shinobi became quite busy plying their unique trades to the highest bidder. It was during this time that some of Japan's most legendary shinobi tales were spun. Some were for the most part true, while others were figments of the imagination which persist through generations of storytelling laced with embellishments. Perhaps in the greatest shinobi, the most famous shinobi of all, Hattori Hanzo of Iga, saved the life of Japan's soon-to-be greatest shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu. This is an incredible story that all students of shinobi need to hear. We tell this story about these two lifelong friends in our video, the ninja and the shogun, how Hattori Hanzo saved the life of Tokugawa Ieyasu. We'll leave a link to this fascinating tale in the description for this video. In another example of the resourcefulness of the shinobi, their skills were not only reserved for men, there were indeed women who became accomplished shinobi as well. Women shinobi were referred to as kunoichi. By far the most accomplished kunoichi was Mochizuki Chiyomi. She was blessed with impeccable shinobi lineage, as she was the daughter of a legendary ninja master, Mochizuki Izumo no Kami, founder of the Koga ninja. Chiyomi did not become a kunoichi until after her samurai lord husband had died. Shortly after his death, none other than the Tiger of Kai, legendary leader Takeda Shingen entrusted her with creating a network of female spies. Disguised as shrine maidens, entertainers and servants, these women infiltrated enemy territories, gathered intelligence, and relayed vital information back to Shingen. Chiyomi's methods were as brilliant as they were ruthless. She recruited orphaned girls, victims of war, and displaced women, and put them through rigorous ninjutsu training. Her kunoichi became assassins, spies, couriers, and seducers who could manipulate their surroundings to achieve their goals. Like so many shinobi tales, the reality behind many of the feats attributed to Chiyomi and her band of kunoichi probably lies somewhere between truth, embellishment, and falsehoods. Suffice it to say, from what we do know, she was pivotal in organizing and developing the kunoichi into an effective female shadow warrior force. The shinobi would meet their demise in a violent fashion. After being allowed to exist autonomously for decades, they soon ran afoul of none other than the ruthless Oda Nobunaga, the great unifier of Japan. After repeated conflicts with them, he viewed the shinobi as a thorn in his efforts to gain control of all of Japan and vowed to make an example of the defiant shinobi. That would prove to be no easy task. After years and multiple failed attempts to invade Iga, Nobunaga's forces were finally successful in overthrowing the Iga shinobi. This conflict would last over 2 years, from 1579 through 1581. It became known as the Tensho Wars 1 and 2. The First Tensho War was a humiliating and merciless defeat of the forces of Nobunaga's son at the hands of the shinobi. Nobunaga did not make the same mistake twice, and he all but obliterated the shinobi of Iga by the end of the Second Tensho War. At the closing of the Sengoku period, the newfound peace across all of Japan under the reign of Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu removed the need for the services that the shinobi had provided, and they soon went back to being the simple farmers and tradesmen of the highlands of central Japan. Epilogue. While the last shinobi has been dead for centuries, our fascination with them only persists. And with their presence in video games like Ninja Gaiden series and Mortal Kombat and anime series like Naruto and Dragon Ball Z, younger generations continue our fascination with these uniquely skilled figures. And that brings us to the end of the rise of the shinobi, how a small peasant society became Japan's most feared covert operatives. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please be sure to like, share and comment on it. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. And until next time, sayonara.